Hi everyone, welcome to our webinar. We are kicking off 2024 with a nice webinar to talk about emerging trends in employee experience for 2024. We have been doing this webinar series online series, either a summit or shorter talks like this, to talk about and deep dive about employee experience, people engagement, and tactics for human resource professionals and people leaders. So I'm very happy to welcome you all, especially HR professionals, people leaders, and everyone that you are live today. We have a amazing expert, Sarah Sabin. She is executive and team coach. I would like to start by welcoming her. Welcome, Sarah. Great to have you today.
Hi, Begum. It's really good to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Same. Great to have you. And I'm really excited to talk about the emerging trends in employee experience. Some people might think that employee experience has been a buzzword. However, it's not for us. We don't think that it's a period of time that became popular, but it's a lifestyle, and also it's a approach that we highly highlight the importance, and it needs to be sustainable, and that you need to touch people more and more every day. So that's why we are doing those webinars. We're going to be talking about what happened last year in 2023, what were the main trends that we spotted, and then we're going to talk about this year, what are the things that we're going to be seeing a lot, and Sarah will share best practices and some tactics that you can apply in your workspace. So great. Let me start by giving the floor to you, Sarah, if you would like to introduce yourself first of all.
Okay, so I will keep this brief. I'm Sarah Sabin, executive and team coach, and I work with companies to actively coach and train leadership and management levels in the core skills, strategies, and implementation that will improve individual and team performance and productivity by up to 50%. And for those of you that are attending the webinar today, I'll be offering my performance enhancement intensive session to quickly address team performance issues at a 20% discount, and details for that will follow in the email that you receive post-webinar.
Great. So let me start with the first question, Sarah. Probably you hear this question a lot, but just to wrap up the last year, what were some trends that you have seen over the last years that you also think that will be dominate this year? What are those, what HR leaders and people leaders have in their agendas?
So, great question. And the first thing that was really present in 2023 and is likely to continue into 2024 is resenteeism. And if you're not familiar with what that means, I'll be going into further detail on that and how it impacts companies and company performance. The second thing is really the slow and painful death of the annual review. So it's really not fit for purpose anymore, which is basically to improve employee performance. So I'm going to go into, what to do instead. And the third thing is turning words into action, which creates trust with employees. So what we saw during 2023 is a lot of companies doing maybe token nods or token initiatives to things, but perhaps not really acting on feedback. And that action is so important in creating that loyalty and trust amongst employees.
Great. those are the three trends that we started seeing over the last years, especially last year, that will continue this year as well. You mentioned about resenteeism, that we also hear a lot, annual reviews, that it needs to be ongoing, and acting on feedback. Those are three things that we also hear a lot from the HR professionals we talk to. So my first question will be about the first trend, resenteeism. So we hear this frequently, and why do you think combating resenteeism is important in the workspace? And if you have any suggestions how to challenge it and reverse it.
So why is combating resenteeism important? Well, it's because disengaged employees do not perform well. That is basically the crux of it. And resenteeism is how it sounds, where you've got employees that stick around at work, but they are essentially disengaged. And last year we saw the emergence of hashtags, some of which were quite amusing, but probably not great for employers. But things like hashtag bare minimum Mondays and hashtag lazy girl jobs. And, surveys that were done last year showed the US employee engagement rate was at 34% in May 2023. So this is a real problem. And it's crucial to launch initiatives to combat this, because, it's the knock-on performance, but then, you have the later effect, which is people leaving the workforce, or people creating toxicity within the workforce, which is contagious. So if you've got some people that are disengaged, then that disengagement is likely to spread. So in terms of some of the things that you can do that are crucial for creating the right environment for engagement, and therefore obviously combating resenteeism, number one, really going on a communication drive. So often employees feel unseen and unheard, and that breeds resentment. And, if you think about it logically, you in your personal life, when you feel that someone is not listening to you, it really eats away at you. And, it's the same thing in a work context. So some examples of open communication that you can implement are regular communications around what action is being taken to address core problems, sharing open and honest company updates regularly instead of existing within this veil of silence, where people don't know what's going on. They often create stories around it, and those stories that they've created are really good stories. So it's better to knock things on the head and just be open and transparent about what is going on. You can deliver negative news in a constructive way, if you take the time to really think about and work on how you can communicate effectively. The other thing around communication is allowing employees access to management for the purpose of voicing frustrations and concerns. And this is why management training and emotional intelligence development is really, really important as well. And I just want to add that allowing employees a space to bring up negative emotions is actually likely to be productive, because if they're not allowed a voice, these feelings can fester, meaning the employees become resentful. And once emotions are processed, you can work on how to constructively improve things. So this is not a space for people to just complain about everything all the time. It's a space for people to let off steam so that you can move forward constructively. The second thing is offering development opportunities for employees. So development frequently comes up on Gen Z's employer wish list. Boredom and lack of challenge contribute to disengagement, and providing training opportunities and paths for career advancement aligned with what that employee wants. And side note here, good managers should really know what their employees want and the intersection between meeting their goals and meeting the company goals. And also offering that kind of opportunity for mentorship as well can help morale and retention. So giving a tangible example, one of my connections emailed me recently to say he's been having a tough time with high turnover. And he explained it away, saying he believes it to be the continued fallout from the pandemic, with staff choosing to refocus their lives. And essentially that alleviates an employer from responsibility, because they're saying, well, hey, it's not me, it's people choosing other things. And, you know, that might be true to a certain extent. Maybe they've decided to go and become a gardener or an architect. But, you know, if it is high turnover, then you need to look at yourself and stop creating excuses, such as it's the fallout from the pandemic or whatever it is.
Yeah, because it was a huge amount of people who went for that change. It wasn't a small number. It was a significant number that points out that there's something related to the management and the structure in the workplace.
Exactly. And so, you know, if you are going through high turnover or resenteeism, and they're kind of two sides of the same coin because one tends to follow another, you know, you need to develop that self-awareness and curiosity around, okay, what's really going on here?
Exactly.
And one other thing I'm going to say around combating resenteeism is to define employee roles and expectations clearly. And I will say this does not mean annual reviews. I'm not going to go into too much depth on that because I'm going to go into annual reviews in a little bit. But just to say here, lack of clarity leads to uncertainty. And it's very hard for an employee to do a great job if they're unsure what great looks like. Most people want to feel like they're making a difference and their work has meaning. And in fact, it's one of the dynamics of high-performing teams and a key factor in engagement. So that's really important as well, looking at how do you do that effectively. And just one bonus point here, connection initiatives. So creating opportunities for team bonding and connection, because research shows where people have friendships at work, they are less likely to leave. So that's just a little bonus point in combating resenteeism.
Definitely a very, very important bonus point, Sarah, I would say. You mentioned a lot of important points. First of all, nearly 1/3 of your workforce is not engaged. It's a huge number. Only 1/3 of your workforce is engaged with you. The rest, 2/3, is not. And it highlights the importance of resenteeism, because they may not be, they could be at work today, but may be willing to go to another opportunity next day. So it puts us at big pressure. And you mentioned about there's a likelihood to spread that resenteeism to other employees. So even 1/3 is on the risk who are engaged. And 3 very important steps how to combat resenteeism here. First of all, internal communication. As Sorwe, we always highlight the importance of internal communication, because everything starts with a clear, transparent, and continuous communication. If you do that, first of all, everyone becomes on the same page, they are more engaged. Second thing you mentioned is about allowing emotions, let off the steam, that they can express themselves, that they will, your employees will be feeling heard. and development and mentoring opportunities. They are there with you to develop themselves and fulfill their career dreams. This is how they stuck, and this is how you can lower turnaround, employee turnover. And the bonus point connection initiatives, very, very important that in any occasions, if you create this connectivity, it will boost the engagement levels for sure. Amazing points. So it leads to my second trend, actually. You just mentioned about annual reviews, and we know that there is a dearth of annual reviews at the moment. And what to do instead of doing once upon a year. What are the best practices now that you see in the annual review?
So as I mentioned, properly and clearly setting expectations helps to combat resenteeism, and annual reviews just do not do that, right? It's just not fit for purpose. And let's not forget, the purpose of annual reviews is supposed to be helping people to be better at their jobs. And really, really interesting figure here. So according to Gallup, only 14, that's 14% of employees strongly agree their performance reviews inspire them to improve, which is quite frankly a shocking number.
The percentage is going down and down.
Yeah,
in every trend,
really
I guess.
is. Yes, it really is. The reality is that many employees treat annual reviews as a box to tick off their to-do list. So they really don't put in the necessary time and thought into how they've performed over the course of the year, what their development areas might be, or how they'd like to operate going forward. They're just like, oh, I need to fill in this thing as quickly as I can and get it over with. And another reason is because connecting with team members once a year as a manager just doesn't cut it. So it's difficult and time consuming to think back over a full year of work, much harder than it would be if performance was regularly looked at. The third thing is, if there is a problem with performance, it does not make sense to wait a full year to address the issue. So what I found is that employees are often surprised by what their manager thinks of their performance at the end of the year, because nothing or very little has been addressed directly prior to that conversation. So by the time specific scenarios are brought up in an annual review, they're usually way in the distant past. And, that's not really helpful, because if something happened 9 months ago and you've waited 9 months to say anything, it's on the manager, really, if they didn't, perform as you would expect in that time. And, it quite often happens with clients where they have employees that are not performing. And I always say to them, well, have you sat down and had a direct conversation with them? And generally the answer is, well, no, I haven't. And I always say, well, how can you expect the employee to know if you don't tell them directly?
The importance of feedback on the right time.
Exactly. Yes. Feedback in the course of action. So, and the last thing really is that annual reviews don't address the problem of the perception gap. So when expectations are unclear and it's unclear what good performance looks like, it can be hard for an employee to gauge whether they're doing well or not. So that kind of expectation setting is helpful when you have regular recent examples to refer to. And let's not forget as well, high performers like to feel like they're making progress. Mm-hmm. And quite often you might have employees that think they're doing really badly, but they're doing really well, and vice versa. So you want to really sort of get on the same page about that.
Yeah, I totally agree. Actually, what I noticed, there is a dilemma, because employees doesn't put the same importance to annual reviews. they would like to make it quickly done. However, on the other side, employers, the company put a lot of emphasis on those annual reviews because they are doing those structuring, planning, workforce planning based on those reviews and even appointments. So I think there is a mismatch on the important side. So what can be done to make sure that those things could be aligned, and how to make sure the annual reviews stands in a better way, in an effective way.
Yeah, and that's an excellent point. The perception gap in terms of importance, because you're right, employers do put an awful lot of time and energy into these annual reviews, and for what is got out of it, it's not worth it, essentially, a lot of the time. So things that are important to institute instead: number one, regular reviews. So how regular, again, could vary. It could be monthly, it could be quarterly, it could be bi-weekly. But the point of these regular reviews are that people get regular feedback, expectation setting is done regularly, and course correction can be done. So, as I said, expectations are often not clearly defined when we start a new job, because a job description does not tell an employee actually what's expected of them in the day-to-day, or what excellence looks like, and what support is needed to continuously improve.
And it could change. I think it could change over time as well. It might not fit with your job description in the day one, but could change in the first quarter, second quarter, based on the company goals as well.
Exactly. Yes. So because it's consistently moving, again, we come back to, you need to look at it regularly. And also, if the employee is doing extra things that perhaps they thought they wouldn't be doing, but they seem to be a good fit for, they need support to be able to do that well. So, that's why, because people end up doing things that are often outside their job description, it's really important to give them support if you're going to throw people in the deep end, which actually is a good thing, because it's good for people to be challenged and pushed outside of their comfort zone. And as I've said a few times before, a team should be aligned on what excellent looks like and how to get there, obviously based on the role, based on the function that they're doing. The other thing is, it's a space for praise and gratitude for what the employee is doing exceptionally well. And that is often a really important point in motivation for people to feel appreciated, and also to look at what is not going so well by referring to recent examples, because you should have those, because you're doing it regularly, so that employees get that support they need as they're going along. And then obviously you can course correct if needed. You can provide a forum where an employee can learn from their mistakes, so they're not doing them again and repeating them again and again. Plus, if a particular area needs development, then you can discuss what support is needed and give an opportunity to provide that support, hopefully before any problems arise. So you
don't wait a year to solve those problems.
I think that's the underlying point here. Just don't wait a year.
Exactly. Just solve it in real time. Don't waste your time.
Yeah, exactly. Solve in real time. The second thing is around training managers. So a lot of problems arise as a result of managers being inadequately trained on how to have the kind of conversations with employees that actually yield results in terms of their performance. So a lot of employees end up leaving due to bad bosses, right? So it's obviously important to encourage managers to have these regular check-ins with employees, but it's also important to ensure that they're trained on how to conduct them. Otherwise, they can do more harm than good. So that training could involve role play, for example, to show managers what a positive conversation looks like, what a constructive conversation looks like, how to have frameworks for how to conduct these conversations. But without getting too robotic about it, there's also the emotional intelligence aspect here. They need to get to know their team, and that means having real conversations. So managers should know their team members. They should know, what are their goals? What are they great at doing? What are they not so great at doing? What do they care most about? Because the answers to these questions are essential to tapping into the internal motivators of their team and being able to create that win-win situation where the employee sees a link between their goals and the goals of the company. And once that is established, it becomes a lot easier for managers to talk about expectations and defining good performance and progress.
Yeah, so definitely. And also, I think when they see that their personal goals and the company goals are aligned and supporting each other, they feel more motivated and they stick around more, definitely.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you can do it the easy or the hard way. You might as well do it the easy way. But for managers, there's two elements to it. There's the emotional intelligence part, and there's the actual kind of structure that they need. And the third point is around giving honest feedback. So when a relationship is based on trust, it creates an environment where honest feedback can be given on a regular basis without anyone feeling attacked. So creating regular feedback opportunities, and also managers seeking feedback from their team as well. Managers can model the leadership behaviors that contribute to truly effective performance. So if managers are confrontation averse, which a lot of people are, they might avoid telling these uncomfortable truths, which ultimately ends up being destructive. And, it's often how you get into an annual review and employees get a lower score than they thought they would because their manager was too nice over the course of the year and kind of didn't give them honest feedback. So negative feedback does not need to be abrasive. Managers can be trained to have these discussions in a constructive manner that actually leads to positive change. So those are the three things that I'd say to think about instead of annual reviews.
Set instead, or to support reviews. So you have a holistic understanding about the performance of that person. You mentioned a lot of important stuff, Sarah, again. Regular feedback, setting expectations, course correction on time by showing praise, and instant feedback. We talked a lot about feedback and empowering middle management as well, so they know how to share feedback in the right way, in a motivating way. And actually, I would like to highlight two things: appraisal, kudos sharing, recognition sharing, and also instant feedback sharing. Those two things, if you're in search, please have a look on Sorwe's website, as it allows a technological platform based on your company culture that you can set those feedback sharing and requesting feedback at the same time. So it leads to the final question, final trends. We already started talking about feedback, so we know wholeheartedly the importance of it, but I would like to ask how to act on it. And the reason is we know that companies, they're interested so much in gathering lot of feedback from employees. However, it may lead to a point that they are not acting on it. So it creates this negative feeling towards sharing feedback, because employees would like to be heard and they would like to see the action of it. So what would you suggest companies, any tips on how to actually showing that you're hearing and acting on those employee feedback?
So it's where a lot of employers can go wrong, and it contributes to resenteeism. Asking for feedback, but not really listening or doing anything with that feedback. Now, I just want to create a distinction here, because that doesn't mean that you need to action every single piece of feedback that you receive from every employee. But people need to understand that they are actually listened to, right? That's the important point here. Whether you do what they want or not, it's the point of having listened to and being listened to. And there are ways to show that you have listened to people. And that means, firstly, acknowledging and sharing all the results of the feedback, so that, you know, again, to show and communicate that you have actually looked at the feedback in depth and you respected the time of the people that took the time to give the feedback. Secondly, acting on the common themes that come up within that employee feedback. So, as I said, you don't need to action every single thing that every person says, but if there are common themes that are coming up amongst a lot of employees, those things should be actioned. So you're acting on those and you're communicating what you're doing about that and within what timeline you will action it. So this is a really important point. You don't want to wait too long to act, because that's also demotivating. So if you've decided and communicated that you're going to act on, I don't know, 3 things that came up, give a timeline for doing it and stick to that timeline. Conversely, when you seek feedback and you do nothing with it, that starts to break down connection and trust with employees, which ultimately damages morale and engagement further. And that means that people often resort to complaining, which is never great, and not being honest with their employer, because they kind of get into that mode where they think, what's the point? They don't listen anyway. So in that case, they're unlikely to come up with suggestions to actually make things better, because they've already mentally disengaged.
It also lowers the participation for the feedback sharing for the next time as well. So you will see, if you don't share the action points, you will have a decreasing trend over time, that you're getting less and less participation or feedback directly from your employees.
Yes, exactly. Because once that trust is broken, I think there's a phrase that goes something like, trust takes a long time to build, but just a minute to break. That's true.
Yes, and it's hard to get it back.
Yes.
Secure the trust back.
Yes,
definitely. Very important. First of all, you mentioned about clustering feedback, analyzing the feedback, because you cannot action every single feedback, of course. However, understanding the common themes and analyzing and putting into a timeline and sharing back with a clear communication, so everyone is on the same page again. It comes to the first trend, as we talked, the importance of internal communication. Really important stuff, Sarah. I think we touched upon a very, very important points for this year in 2024. This year going to be a challenging year, given the financial well-being topics, and of course with low engagement rates. So you shared a lot of important stuff about combating resenteeism, how to make sure you review performance continuously, not annually, only once. and we talked about how to actioning employee feedback. So it was really nice to have you. And I would like to highlight, if you have any search, how to action those points in a technological platform, please have a look on sorwe.com. And one final thing before we close down, I would like to invite all the attendees to employee experience community that Sorwe launched recently, a face-to-face networking session that brings all people, leaders together to boost and expand the know-how sharing more and more in London. It's going to be in central London on the 15th of February. The details is on the chat now. So please have a look. We would love to meet you in person as well. So thank you so much, Sarah, again, and hoping to see you in the next session.
Thank you, Begum. It was my pleasure.
Same here. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.